It's here. We're good to go, guys? It being 7:02, I'll call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Wednesday, May 5th, 2021. First order of business is public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, move on to review of minutes for April 21st, 2021. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Just for clarification, that includes the regular meeting and executive session. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. I'd like to welcome Dina Rollman from Green Thumb Industries. Thanks for making the trip to Clinton.
Mr. Chairman, Bill O'Neill with Benson Giordano, the president of Liberty Compassion, and with Dina Roman from the successor business that's looking to buy. With the mask, and I know you asked for public comment, but this woman here, I don't think she quite raised her hand in time, so I think it's about...
My apologies. I either wear the glasses or the mask. I try and do both. Thank you. Ma'am, would you like to come forward? I'm sorry. Public comments, just general comment. If you have, public comments, just general comment. If you have any comments, to let the board know. Do you guys mind giving her the mic?
Yeah, no, there you go.
My apologies. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Okay. My name is Regina Salter, 69 Greeley Street, here in Clinton. And my comment is about the issue with thank you. My comment is the issue with the odor that was at Brook Street and Greeley Street. I live right on the other side of the building, and maybe there were a couple of days that there was an odor, but it has stopped. As a matter of fact, I left my house today. There's no odor or anything. And I think it was because the machine had turned on and caused it, but then it got turned off because it was installed incorrectly. So right now, at this moment, there is no odor, and I'm right there. I'm right on the other side of the building, and they've been great to me, for the past year.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you, Junior.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your understanding. Please.
So, while Dean was here tonight, weeks ago, proposal. First, how did I take those? Very positive. With that,
Thank you. Vin Giordano, Affinity 179 Brook Street. So as we had talked 2 weeks ago, we were here. We discovered that some of our equipment wasn't installed properly. Like I said, it's a work in progress. We're not using the equipment. The odor that came out a little bit was our testing to see how we could work and redo our systems. That is something that is in process now. We have no anticipation that it's going to be used. I can guarantee that that system's not going to be used until it's vented properly to our scrubbing systems. And that is clearly the issue. We have engineers that looked at it. The original contractor is there, has been there, and is there next week modifying. And it's just one of those things that happens. I recognized it, we see it, and as soon as we see it, we take care of it. And the final issue is that, as I had said last time, that our biggest issue in the business right now is contamination. And if you can smell any of the odor from the outside, that means air is getting in an unfiltered way, and that's just dangerous for us. So our business need and the community interests our neighbors are aligned. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to introduce Dina Roman, who is with GTI, who is we had talked about the change of control. I'll let you right to it.
Great. Well, pleasure to meet all of you, and thank you for having me and allowing me to speak to you tonight. It's just important to us that as you hear about this company, industries, you have, a face to the name, feel like you know some company. Well, there we go. Now you
Thank
can
you.
hear me better.
I thought
Great.
something was off.
Thank you. So, we wanted to be sure that you had a face to the name, that you knew, you already have a great working relationship with the Liberty team. Wanted you to hear that we fully intend to just maintain a cooperative partnership just like you already have. We don't intend to disrupt, change anything. When you have a good thing, you keep it going. And also just wanted to introduce the company a little bit. We're based in Chicago. I've actually been with the company since it was founded in 2014. So when I talk to you about, who we are as a company and what our values are, I'm actually saying that as somebody who's been with the company since day one. And so I mean it. And, when we wrote our very first competitive license application in summer of 2014, as part of the application in Illinois, you had to write a community benefit plan. So even though you didn't own a business yet and there wasn't, one plant in the ground, you had to think about how you could show the people, scoring these applications that you were going to be a positive impact to your community. So I think it was a really good exercise to do before you've started a business. Because part of what we did was, go around and start initiating relationships with local not-for-profits, get to know the needs of the community, and then when we did win licenses, we sort of already were able to hit the ground running in terms of making financial donations, having volunteer activities at, food banks, coat drives, things like that. And then really from day one, part of what we also did, starting in Illinois and as we've expanded is any community where we operate, we do look at it as a partnership. The interests are aligned. You want, a positive member of your business community who's generating jobs and tax revenue and employing locally. And you also, what you don't want is somebody who's creating, extra, crime or, sales to underage, children or, all the things that could be negative to a community are the things you don't want. Well, we're totally aligned. We want to be that positive impact to the community. So when we come to your community, we're always hiring. I think right now on our job board nationally, I think we have about 150 jobs posted. We're in a pretty stratospheric growth mode over 7 years, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. So we're bringing jobs and tax revenue for sure. But also a commitment to supporting the local community. We actually have formalized committees at every one of our facilities. That's, the community engagement committee. And those are employee volunteers who volunteer, evenings, weekends, holidays, what have you, to really work with others in the community and make financial contributions and contributions of time. And so, another thing, a lot of times, there can be a little, and I should just mention, you already know this from having a regulated cannabis business in your community, and you're going to have more, but, these licenses themselves to grow and sell regulated cannabis are very valuable, right? And if you don't take compliance seriously, you're jeopardizing your license that, you've invested, millions of dollars in, to operate. So, from self-interest alone, you can bet that, any company with a, state license and local license is going to take compliance seriously. And again, when you're making a long-term investment in a community, you can't afford to have the missteps of, if you have a dispensary of selling, to an underage minor. You're literally jeopardizing your license. If you have diversion going on in your facility and all of a sudden law enforcement's involved at your facility, that's not a good move for having a positive long-term relationship. So I'm able to tell you that we have letters of recommendation from multiple police chiefs across the country, including in Amherst, because they've worked with our company for years and seen that we are, responsible, we do what we say we're going to do, and we partner with communities. So I just wanted to reassure you that that's kind of our MO, and that's exactly how we would, look to operate here. And then just beyond that, regulated legal cannabis is a new thing across the country. And when companies are smaller and private, there can be a little bit less transparency sometimes as to like, well, who exactly owns it and what exactly are their financials and what exactly are they up to? And so I mentioned that we are publicly traded on the Canadian Securities Exchange, only to tell you that that has greatly increased our transparency. So if you want to know what we're up to from a revenue perspective, how many people we employ, where we operate, kind of anything and everything that any, investor is entitled to know, you're welcome to ask me, but, it's all right there on a publicly available website. So, transparency is key to us, and what isn't publicly available on the internet, you can call me and ask me. That's why I wanted you to have my face. I think you have my email and phone number. If you don't, I'll get it to you. But just wanted you to be sure that you always had, somebody you could pick up the phone and call if there were questions, concerns, or anything like that.
Thank you.
And with that, I would, welcome any questions.
Open up to the board.
Chairman?
Please.
Just, I'm curious about, you say you're the face of the new entity. What is your exact role? Are you a spokesperson that is coming here tonight, or are you going to be involved in the day-to-day management? Are you going to be on site frequently?
Right. Happy to answer that. So my background is as an attorney. So I practiced law for about 15 years. And then it was about 7 years ago that I met the founder and CEO of Green Thumb Industries and helped as a lawyer with that application process. And then once GTI won those initial licenses, I quit my job at the law firm and started supporting GTI from a regulatory compliance perspective and legal perspective. And then I was an in-house attorney for the company for years in multiple markets. And now I oversee our government relations department, which is government and regulatory affairs nationally. So I, through that role, wind up very involved in the operations of the company, because whenever we're doing something related to zoning, I generally get involved to make sure that there's good communication with the town, that I'm sort of that bridge between sort of the true operations and the lawyers and the town. So, you'll see me when appropriate at meetings here. I work with our operations team because a lot of times there are regulations for our facilities that we'd like to see changed in some way or another. So I'll work with local trade associations and local legislators or, other government officials on, education and advocacy related to legislation. So I'm just, they can't get rid of me at the company. I've been there since it was founded. I'll continue to be around. So when I say you can call me, it's basically like I'm a great conduit in the sense that if I don't know the answer to the question, I always know exactly how to get that answer and get it quickly.
Thank you.
Has the changeover happened yet, or is there a timeline for that?
So we've received regulatory approval from the Cannabis Control Commission, and that's done. And so what they want to see is local approval from you all.
And that's what, Michael? That's the new community host agreement? Michael? That's the new host agreement? Okay. Terrific.
The host
Yep.
agreement doesn't change.
Okay.
So really, we have, I think, provided the Board of Selectmen with a letter that would come from you that would signify, that you had authority to approve the change of control.
Okay.
And that's really all that's needed.
Perfect. Yeah.
For the board, we just need to take a vote to approve that. It's really an ownership change. It's, the entity's not changing, just the ownership is changing. We, you had individual stockholders before, so now it's going to be an entity that is the controlling shareholder. So what they're looking for is a vote from this board, if the board is so inclined, to approve that ownership change, and we'd have to sign off on a letter that would go to the Cannabis Control.
We prepared to do that tonight?
I am.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we authorize the transfer of ownership to GTI for 179 Brook Street.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? I should have mentioned this under general comments. I just want to thank you guys for the ongoing relationship we have, and encourage people out there that I think, you know, a lot of times people use small town politics as some kind of a negative or a slur, but this is a good example of where someone can contact me and say, hey, something's not right over there. Our building inspector can come and talk, and we can make changes. It's a work in progress. We get results. So I thank you for being responsive and being transparent and for working with us, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look forward to working with you all.
Next up, we have representative from Sterling Street Brewery, looking for an entertainment license. Welcome.
How's it going?
Great. Could you just give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yep. So I'm Brian Mason, co-founder of Sterling Street Brewery. My personal address? Or
Just the brewery address.
business
is
share,
fine.
175 Sterling Street
Yep.
in Clinton. And we are here looking for the entertainment license. We're looking to basically just get, you know, some acoustic acts in there. We're not going to throw concerts or anything like that.
Yep.
A couple duos on weekends or Friday nights, something like that. Keeping our normal hours, not looking for any extended hours or anything. We're open until 10 o'clock.
Would that be inside or outside? Can you do inside now?
I
or-
can't do inside now until I think it's May 10th.
Okay.
According to the,
Oh, well, that's coming up. Okay.
yeah, we'd be looking for outside during days on the weekends and then inside.
Great. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, what type of outdoor entertainment would it be? I'm concerned about disruption of the neighborhood and residential complaints.
Yep, so we'd be looking for, I would say, mostly just a duo, like, you know, someone playing the guitar, someone singing, acoustic, you know, nothing, no giant bands or anything like that. And if it was during the day, it would be, you know, if it was outside, it'd be during the day. We're not looking for any, you know, concerts at 8 o'clock at night or something like that.
Any other questions?
I know you said acoustic, but there would still be like amplification,
Yeah,
right? Still have
yep.
speakers, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess what I'd say by acoustic is guitar, you know, we're not looking
Sure.
for someone
right.
with a drum set going crazy.
Yeah, and it's not your area where the brewery is. It's not like a heavily residential area, is it? I mean,
Not at all.
Okay.
No.
Any other questions or comments? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's a public hearing.
Oh, I thank you for the correction. I'd like to welcome anyone who's in favor of this application. Hearing none, is there anyone here in opposition of the application? Thank you. I'll close that portion of the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move we grant the entertainment license to Sterling Street Brewery.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next up, Franny Hodge from the Clinton Greenway Conservation Trust for an update on the rail trail project.
You need my name and address?
Please.
Franny Hodge, 16 Harbor Street, Clinton, Mass. Can you hear me? Am I close enough?
Yeah, is that green light on? No.
Can you hear me?
Is the green light on that base?
Yes.
Yeah, it is, but it's not
I
as
try
loud as
the
I
other
thought
one?
it'd be. Do you want to try
green
the other
light's
one?
brighter on
Yeah,
this
try
one.
that one if you don't mind. I thought I'm going deaf, but it doesn't sound right.
No.
Okay.
It did for a minute.
Okay.
Is this one better?
Much better.
Oh,
much
way
better.
better. Okay. So Michael did give you a few things in your packet, so it would keep me on point and that we could go through it quickly. But I just wanted to briefly give the board an update on where we are with the project. The acquisition was completed in December of 2020, and thank you very much, Mr. Gibbons, for bringing that over the line. We weren't able to secure the tunnel in December because winter had set in, and it wasn't possible to do the fencing. So we have engaged Miller Fence to put in the gates. It should be done in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And then we plan to, so we'll have a firebox, so it'll be locked. There'll be a firebox that the fire department will have the key. And I have actually reviewed that with both chiefs. I'll check in with them again before we actually do the work. But we're planning to put signs on the fence so that people understand what's going on. So I think you should have some samples. The ones that would go in the gate would be no trespassing. And for the safety of all visitors, the tunnel is closed for repairs, Town of Clinton. So if there's any adjustments you want to those kinds of signs, we can make it. And then the other one is to draw people's attention to the fact that we are trying to repair the tunnel and to join, donate, volunteer for our organization so that we can continue to work on that. A third sign will be probably near the trail, just identifying as a section of the Mass Central Rail Trail. And we're actually also required to identify it as a project of Mass Trail, so that's their logo in the lower right-hand corner. A fourth area that we realized we probably need to put a sign is somewhere near the tunnel on the street, so that people have noticed that the tunnel is closed before they walk up there. Because it is a very popular site now, and people sometimes come from, other communities and even outside the state to visit it. So if people are aware and see that from the street, it might also deter people from going up there and potentially painting over the fence or the signs or, other kinds of vandalism. So I wanted to get any feedback that you have on those items and, whether there's any questions or concerns on that.
Yeah, Bill?
Chairman, Franny, thank you for all your work on making this happen. Many of us have been here for at least part of the time that you've been working on this, and it was a great thing that you did. I have a couple of questions about the tunnel itself.
Sure.
Why are we closing it? What is the hazard?
Well, so it actually is relatively safe. There are some places where there are rocks loose near the top of the tunnel, there could be a rock that could fall from those places where there's loose rock. So that would be a place where someone could potentially get injured. It's rather wet. That's not really a serious concern. And I've been through it myself, so I don't really feel like I'm in danger when I'm walking through. But if you think about the number of people that are coming through and that someone could potentially get hurt by one of the rocks, that would be the concern. When we started the project, it was something that we had asked the fire chief and the police chief about. Do you just want signage relative to the tunnel? Would you prefer a gated fence? And they felt like signs wouldn't really do anything, and that the gated fence would be better. It is owned by the town, so it's certainly a decision of the town if you'd like to keep it open, but until it's repaired, there is some moderate risk that somebody could get injured.
How extensive are the repairs that are necessary to allow it to be
Yeah,
open?
so there's probably a couple steps. So the first step, based on the tunnel inspection that we did, is to scale the tunnel, so that essentially you go in and you get all the loose rock out. That could be sufficient. So, and it also depends on the level of risk that the town wants to have. It's because there are some places where it's wet and there are separations in the rock, we would likely also do a second step where you bolt those together so that they don't pull apart anymore. And then a third step would be to put wire mesh so it basically pulls the water away from the center of the tunnel. In the winter, it can get lots of icicles from the top to the floor. And if you can get that moisture away from the tunnel and draining, then it's going to be in much better shape. So it's likely going to be a multi-step, but our next piece of the project will be to go out to bid for a complete design and recommendation on the steps to repair it and bring it up to suitable for a multi-use trail.
Any idea of the order of magnitude? I know you can't have bids at this point, but are we talking a $10,000 fix? Are we talking a $1 million fix? What?
Yes, so it's more than 10 and less than a million. Yeah, no, in the steps, it's probably in the range of $100,000 on each step. But the first thing that we want to do is go out to bid and get a complete plan. So that detailed bid will probably be in the range of 25 to 50K. So we're looking for grants for that now. There might be companies that would do it at no charge if you give them the business. But there's a significant amount of work that a bidder would need to do to basically make a recommendation that they can stand by.
Do you have funding at this time to?
No, do you have any money?
We already gave it to you.
Yeah, no, but so that did take care of the acquisition. So we will go look for grant money for that next step, and then likely we'll look for private funding organizations for that first grant, and then we'll go back to Mass Trails because they have funding from Mass DOT for things like the tunnel repair itself.
Not going to hold you to this, but when could you foresee the tunnel being open to the public again?
So this, over the next 6 months, we'll apply for that first grant to get a bid for the design. I'd like to have that completed this year so that we can then apply for grants for the repairs on the next grant cycle for Mass Trails. Those are due in February and awarded in July. So that would hopefully mean the first step in the repair could be started a year from July.
First step in the repair.
Yeah, well, so if it is a multi-step process, so we don't know that yet. Ideally, everything could be done at once. So for example, if it's determined that all that's required is scaling it and maybe modest repairs where there's places where there's separation in the rock, then it can likely be done in one, it's be like a 4 to 6 week process.
So from today, at least a year, maybe 2?
Yes,
Thank you.
realistically,
Right, that's what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you need anything from us tonight?
No, well, there were just 2 other things I wanted to mention, so, and get advice on. So one is, we're hosting a walk, so this is just pure advertising for us,
Plug
for
away.
people to come to the trail. It's on May 15th, 10 a.m. for a couple hours. It's about a 2-mile walk, and it'll go through Rauscher Farm and some other surrounding trails, so it's a nice little loop trail. It'll be a lot of fun. You can bring a picnic, so we are advertising that. And then another related item is we're drafting a press release. So I would like to know who in the town should review the press release before we send it out, because it will mention the town of Clinton as, partnering with the Clinton Greenway Conservation Trust on this acquisition.
You can send it to me.
I can send it to you?
I'll take a look at it.
Excellent, thank you.
If that's okay with the board.
And then the last thing I was going to mention was the design phase with Mr. Connolly already asked about. So I think that's it.
Mr. Chair,
Terrific, yes.
is there going to be anything done about the fencing on top of the tunnel? That seems to be a pretty popular spot for where people will kind of sit on the edge of it.
Oh, you mean hanging over the street?
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
yes.
like the top of the tunnel.
Oh, the way top.
Yeah, the way top. Is there anything that,
Yeah, so I haven't seen that. I thought you meant people were hanging their feet over Route 70. Yeah, so there's certainly some things that we can do to keep people from going on that path. Because the other thing you don't want is sometimes people go, oh, the tunnel's really wet. I'm just going to get to the other side going over the top. And as you know, it's private property. So there's homeowners whose property abuts the tunnel. So if you go that way, you end up in somebody's backyard. So yeah, certainly we will look into that. I hadn't really thought about that at this phase yet. But good point.
Anything else from Ms. Hodge? Well, thank you as always.
All right, thanks very much.
Looking forward to annual town meeting. The Superintendent of Public Works is requesting an amendment to the fiscal 21 Water Enterprise Fund budget through an article at a special town meeting to be held just before the annual town meeting on June 7th. There's a draft warrant in your packet. Mr. Ward, do you?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, it's just an amendment to the FY21 budget, Water Department budget, It will be a one-article town meeting. In order to meet the posting requirements, it would have to be in next week's paper. So if the board was so inclined, we'd need to kind of have a decision on that issue tonight. The annual town meeting, it's only 1 week posting, so that will be finalized at the next board meeting on May 19th. But this would be just one article, special town meeting, just open, vote, and close, and then go into the regular of that night. So there was and Mr. McGowan is here if there was any specific questions, but we're looking for a $110,000 amendment to get through to the end of fiscal year to June 30th. Going forward, there are 2 loans that are being paid off this fiscal year in about a $500,000 amount. So hopefully going forward next year, the budget will be more manageable with that extra money that can be redistributed amongst the other needs of the department.
So was there a specific thing that caused this spike, or is this something we anticipate for years going forward, Mr. McGowan? Yeah.
Chris can probably help out.
Just use the mic on that side, if that's okay.
Yeah, there were really 2 causes to the issue, 2 or 3 really, but I mean, inflation, our chemical costs have gone up drastically, like everything else has gone up, and that kind of, we took a hit on that. At the beginning of this, when we put together this budget, we had the prior year a very poor year of revenue. The year so 2 years before this budget, we had quite a bit of revenue, so we had a pretty good size, we budgeted accordingly. We had a very, very poor year the next year, so we budgeted for this fiscal year based on that much revenue, which was quite low. So our budget was actually lower than we normally would have it. So between the inflation, and we have had quite a few more sewer issues this year than we normally have, which I expect, because we're going to be doing a lot of repairs to our sewer system, that's going to, a lot of that will go away as well. But I believe it was really based on those 3 issues, the lowering of the budget in general, the inflation, and a few issues and problems we've had that aren't typical in a typical year. So I don't think this is an issue going forward, just to get us through this year. We're very, very low on money right now, and we have 2 months to go still, so I'm hoping not to spend all that. It's retained earnings, so it's not raising rates. It's just out of our retained earnings, so we have money sitting there that we can appropriate to use for this issue.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, what's the pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the warrant for the special town meeting.
Motion made and seconded to approve. All right, so we're going to do this at 7, and then the annual after? That's the plan?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So this will start at 7, and then we'll do the annual after that.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. And it would be, probably the other one, we'll just probably say 7:15.
Sure.
I think we usually do 7:15, but we probably don't even need that much time, but by the time we get started, it probably would fill up that 15 minutes anyway. So.
I don't know if this is in this motion, do we need to set a quorum for this too? Reduce the quorum for this as well, or?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll have to go through the same process where, and I don't know, we'd have to do.
We have to do that
separately.
tonight?
For each one, we'd have to take a vote, yeah, so you'd have to take separate votes in order to do that, but we'll be doing that at a future meeting. We'll advertise to do these hearing at the Selectmen meeting, to take the votes, to change the quorum, and then that night it'll take effect, so.
Okay.
So I guess we have to do it for each one, so.
Just for my information, the extended advertisement, we don't have to decide the quorum for the advertisement? We're good tonight? We don't have to decide it tonight for a special? Do we have to decide the quorum for the advertisement? No.
No, the advertising is going to take place now in the future, so at the first Board of Selectmen meeting in June, which would be, June 2nd, whatever that date is, that Wednesday before the town meeting, that's the meeting you'll take the vote, if you're so inclined to reduce the quorum.
Fine.
For now, it'll be for both these meetings. We'll have to advertise it over the
Yep.
next.
Okay.
That has to be advertised first, so the advertisement will contain, we'll have the Board of Selectmen meeting, of whatever it is. And take that vote that night, and reduce the quorum, and for the meeting 5 days later, it's whatever the board votes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. We also have the draft of the annual town meeting warrant. Doesn't need to be finalized until next meeting, but we're happy to have any discussion or questions for the town administrator or anyone else if we had a chance to review this.
Yeah, I know there are quite a few articles on there, so, yeah, I don't know if the board wanted to go down individually, or just ask questions specifically that you might have. If I took a copy, so I don't know how. I should have most of them there, but I think I might. Yeah, this draft I think is a little light.
Well, I'm happy to run through these if anybody, we'll bang them out, or do you want to?
I'd like to try to bang them out quick if
Yeah.
we can.
All right. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one of these first ones are all basically standard accounting? Looks like up to 5. Article 6 is our wheat contribution of $20,000. Article 7 is establishing revolving funds, again, standard accounting. Article 8 is for the senior tax rebate, $30,000 to help with the assessor's rebate program. Article 9 is unpaid bills.
Yeah, and those numbers might change, Mr.
Right.
Chair. So,
Totaling, I don't know, maybe $2,100. Article 10, closing out unexpended balances, warrant articles, that's blank right now, so that's to come.
right, and Mr. Chair, those will be listed out. We're just finalizing those right now through an initiative we worked out with Selectman Cobus about, which is that was long overdue. That there's a number of warrant articles from prior years that have small balances in them. So we'll list those all out and close those out to general fund. So those will come off the books for the accountant.
Thank you.
So by the next meeting, those will be finalized.
Article 11 rescinds an article from the 2016 annual town meeting for purchase of open space, and that's because we received a grant to cover that?
Right, this here was for the Sislak land, and we ended up getting an open space grant to purchase that, but we needed to have town meeting give the town the authorization to buy the land in the event that, we didn't get the full grant, but we ended up getting the full grant, and the Sudbury Valley trustees put in the other portion of it. So again, that borrowing authorization still sits there on the books until town meeting rescinds it.
Terrific. It's a great spot, I recommend it. It's 40 Ks. Health Insurance Trust Fund, that number is to come.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, could I propose, because we'll be meeting with the Finance
Yeah.
Subcommittee, and it would be helpful if we knew the order of magnitude of some of this stuff. And most years, we've allocated $100,000 to each one of these accounts. A couple of times we tried to do 150, but I think...
Yeah, I think it's been average 100, then I think 150, maybe even 200 one year, but 150 a couple of years, and then most of the time at least 100. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to fill in the dots there
Yep.
at 100,000 each on Article 12 and
Stabilization
13.
and health insurance, okay. So 13 would be stabilization funds, so we're looking to put 100,000 there. This is a transfer from the landfill enterprise fund, Article 14, $3.2 million to capital projects and infrastructure improvement stabilization fund. That would be that's our normal landfill article. Article 15 is appropriating from the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund, $175,000 to support the cable access services program and equipment. Article 16, this is fulfilling our contractual obligation for retroactive wages for the fire department. Final number to come at our next meeting. Similarly, Article 17 is for retroactive for contractual obligations for the police department. Yes. Article 18, most people know, we've been accepted into the Massachusetts School Building Authority reimbursement program for looking at needs at the Clinton Middle School. The first step in that is to do a feasibility study. This Article 18 would appropriate from a revenue source that
The revenue source, whether it's borrowing
Sure.
or stabilization fund or something else.
$1 million, I believe, is it 74%, 75%, Michael, that's
Yeah, 74%.
74% that's reimbursable, so that's money that we would, the majority of it we would get back. That's to do a feasibility study. Again, it's the first step to whether we need repairs at the middle school, a new middle school, or what. Article 19 is raise and appropriate or transfer from the landfill enterprise fund, retain earnings, the sum of $3.1 million to landfill closure reserve. Article 20 is $3 million for the South Meadow dredging project from the landfill enterprise fund closure reserve. Article 21 would be $2 million from the Capital Projects and Infrastructure Improvement Stabilization Fund for road resurfacing. Article 22 would be $2 million from the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund for sewer system inflow and infiltration improvements. That's an ongoing project we've been working on for a few years. Article 23 would be to, Michael, you feel free to step in here because this one I'm not so sure about. The drainage improvement project authorized under Article 21 of the 2019 annual town meeting. This is, all right, stormwater system permit requirements.
Right, so this is a balance that was left in a previous article for the Public Works, and the superintendent is asking that that money be reauthorized for stormwater system further work that needs to be done.
All right, Article 24 and 25 are for new F-550 utility body trucks for the Department of Public Works and Department of Facilities and Grounds, $65,000 each. Article 26 is $75,000 for the Department of Facilities and Grounds for beautification of the downtown business district. As you can see, we're moving forward with that, and this is to establish a fund for seasonal banners or lighting to make sure that we're making the most of the opportunity down there. Article 27 is $144,000 for, this is the Russia Farm project to help with handicap access and parking.
And Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
I may, on that article, this is available funds that left over from the Russia Farm project. So there is money to do what they want to do in that project, but we're also looking to appropriate the full amount. We are exploring doing a refinancing of the loans, of the borrowing from that far back. The rates are very favorable, so there is considerable savings for the town if we can refinance. There were a multi-purpose borrowing that we did at that time. However, one of the requirements is that we can't have balance of money left over in the bank that we're, getting interest on money that we're borrowing and now looking to reborrow. So we really can't have any balance. So we're asking to close out this account, but it comes at a good time because they have a project that they want to do that they were going to ask the town for funding for, so they can use the money that was already appropriated previously for that land to do this project. So.
Terrific. Article 28 is to accept.
Just as a quick background, sorry to cut you off, Mr. Chair, but just on this one here, this was a previous article we had as a home rule that went to the legislature. There was a year that there were a couple of different home rules, and through Representative Kilcoyne, doing some research on our current home rules, found that this one had never made it through the process. There were two. There was one home rule that allowed the town to do minor work on private roads in the event that there was a safety issue for an ambulance or public safety vehicle. They could fill a pothole, or we could plow a road to widen the street if need be, but no major work or not repaving the road or anything like that. Then there was an issue where there were private roads that the town had been fully maintaining and paving and doing all the infrastructure work for decades and decades and generations. So those, we felt that those should become permanent public ways. So we had put this and the two articles on for legislation. The other one passed, but this one didn't. And then we had more the following year or last year. So this one apparently hadn't been refiled. So Representative Kilcoyne just suggested if it's something, the ones that we did last year, the authorization still stands, but this was 2 years ago, so that if we still wanted to do this, kind of a housekeeping issue, that we could put it back on and just reauthorize that to go through. So it would just add these roads to the Public Works list of public ways that we currently maintain anyway. So it's really kind of a housekeeping issue that we would just kind of clean up that so there isn't any question in the future whether we can do work on them or not.
Thank you.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, I hope our other home rule petitions, the more current ones, don't fall in the same hole that this one did.
I echo that concern. Article 29 is to accept provisions of Mass General Law providing for smoke detectors to be located in all sleeping areas upon the sale or transfer of any residential property regardless of the year it was built. Article 30 is a request to amend the personnel bylaw by replacing the town administrator for personnel board in the second sentence as the entity to approve the starting rate for new employee appointments. Article 31.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to ensure in that language, Mike and Bob, so the intent of that is that the personnel board still votes to create the scale, but the town administrator just has the authority to place within the scale. Just because, and it may be worded fine, I'm not a lawyer, but I just want to make sure that within that language that it still gives the authority of the personnel board to create the salary. It's just allowing the town administrator to place a new hire within that range. That's all.
Yeah, and this is a placeholder that I put together, but certainly town council is reviewing it before we have a final version.
Okay.
There is a specific section, that 3.2-3, which just deals with that one issue.
Yep.
So it doesn't negate the rest of the authority of the personnel board. It's only speaking to changing that one specific section. But
Okay.
I would defer to town council's final wording before we publish.
Thank you.
Article 31 would increase the number of police lieutenants from 1 to 2.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So with that bylaw, the bylaw review committee had, one of the things I had asked was removing the bylaw that structures the police department. Should the police department or the chief have the authority to basically, structure that department as they see fit versus being, being guided by the bylaw itself?
I think, and I'm just guessing here, the concern is that with the new chief, they're hoping to restructure, so maybe this would allow us to make that change and then, so they're not hamstrung. We're not going to be able to eliminate that this year, right?
Well, I think what Mr. Kovas alluded to is he's saying, maybe the board wants to consider, getting rid of a lot of those provisions to say, let the police department structure internally as the chief sees fit. Right now, if think about it, if you want to add another lieutenant, it's at the discretion of town meeting, not the police.
So would we need to
correct?
Would we need to put another another article on to eliminate?
Put another article on, or revise this article, or
Okay.
The board has that authority to do that.
I'm fine doing that if we can pull it off in time. If not, I just want to make sure that they have the people they need.
Yeah, I think this article was presented by the police chief just with the intent of trying to add another command officer, but certainly, as the town solicitor indicated, if we wanted to kind of work on restructuring what that whole department would be, because the Board of Selectmen are police commissioners. So the police chief would come with the plan to the police commissioners, it would have to go through budgeting and town meeting, so it would have to go through those approvals anyways. But being locked into a staffing of X number is kind of rigid, where it's only once a year that you can go in and make that change. So I think it's, it's definitely a good point worth discussing and maybe coming up with maybe some creative language that could kind of take care of this issue, but also overarching. So for the next meeting, if the board's so inclined, we can work on that for the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'm supportive of that and the previous article regarding the personnel board. Both of those things are things we should be doing.
Do we need a motion for that, or can we handle that here? Okay. All right. So we'll come up with some language to I guess, get rid of that section of the bylaw. And Matt, your point on this. Thank you for bringing it up. 32 is a vote to eliminate the annual municipal caucus. 33 is a request to eliminate the town meeting quorum. 34 is, and this is a long one, it looks like it has to do with the leash law.
Yeah, the basic premise is to beef up the fines for loose dogs and for unlicensed dogs, but there is a provision being put in to the leash law, the 24-hour leash law, that it require that any dog be under a physical restraint by way of a leash when on any public property. And then there's a definition of restraint that that would have to be in control of the owner at all times. I think it's just trying to address an issue that the board had of a dog case where there was a dog was on private property, but it wasn't restrained, and it then ran off the property into the street and attacked another dog in the public way. So they were saying, well, the dog was, on my own property, and it wasn't leashed, but it was on my property. But then the dog got away. So even if you're going to have the dog out free on your property, you got to find a way to make sure it's contained and it's not getting out to the public. So that was kind of the big change. The other ones is just trying to up the fines for subsequent offenses on unleashed dogs and not cleaning up dog excrement, that those fines on third offenses would be higher.
Is there, on something like this, and it's something I brought up in the past, I just know that, I certainly can't speak to the, to the need for this. Is there someone, do we have like a subject matter expert who can talk about why we need this, just for town meeting? I don't know who's proposing it. If it's us, then we need to be able to defend it. It's just one of those kind of quirky ones that I want to make sure that if someone has a question, we have somebody there who can answer it.
Sure. This was sponsored by the Animal Control Officer, so
Okay.
We can reach out to the moderator and ask if he would be allowed.
Right, he's out of town.
Technically not a town resident, so we can ask the moderator for
Okay.
permission to allow him to be there. So it's a good point.
Great. All right, Article 35 is amendment to the administrative bylaws.
Yeah, the next two are very
Help me out
lengthy,
here.
Mr. Chair, and the Superintendent of Public Works is here.
Oh,
if
this
he
is
wants to
stormwater.
address
Yep.
them, but they're issues that came up in the stormwater regulations of having to put in bylaws for illicit discharge and elimination. So that one is very lengthy, and then the second one is for, what's the other one, 35, 36.
Separating storm sewer systems.
Basically, stormwater regulation. One of them's already bylaw, we have to amend the terms that we got for our MS scores. The second one is new bylaw for the discharges, so it gives us the authority to get rid of discharges, find people
Thank you. This is a long one, hang on. Article 37 is a zoning bylaw change to address the number of steel storage containers on properties. This is a similar one. I'm hoping that someone from the ZBA can...
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I believe the planning board is required to have a public hearing on a proposal like this, and for whatever reason, they canceled the public hearing, and I don't know if they've rescheduled it.
I believe it's rescheduled for the first Tuesday in June. I believe that is the second.
Okay.
Yeah, they just met last night, so I believe it wasn't on that agenda. I believe it's going to be on their June agenda just prior to town meeting. Yep. As Mr. Busno indicated. Yep.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, isn't that kind of late to allow for any public input and revision to the proposed bylaw? Isn't that the purpose of a public hearing, to hear the concerns of affected parties?
Yeah, the planning board is required to make a report at town meeting, so I think their public hearing is for them to receive input so that they can take a position on these to the townspeople when they vote on at town meeting.
Thank you.
Article 38 is another amendment to the zoning bylaws regarding requiring parking requirements. Article 39, yeah, this one just says we're deleting section 3.2B, existing lots. Is there any background on that, Michael? For 39?
Yeah, that one, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we don't have much on that one.
I don't have the zoning bylaw in front of me, so I'm not sure what that one is. Those were put forward by the planning board, so I didn't look that one up. I apologize.
And Article 40 is a citizen's petition to grant an all alcohol package store license to premises on High Street. Any other? Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
Was there any determination on the closing out of any accounts that had a balance in them, even though either the purchase of the project had been deemed completed by the department head or the board?
Sorry, in terms of the closeouts, yeah?
Yeah, so going through, so any of the accounts from previous warrant, previous years.
Right.
We had talked about closing out any of those balances if the department head or the board had deemed the project to be completed or the purchase to be complete. So is that going to be done under a warrant article, or is that?
Yes, yep, that would be that. I think it was Article 10, I believe. So that was going to be kind of a catch-all. I'm just finalizing with all the departments which ones, because there's some that work is being completed, that we just said, we need work to be done by this, small amounts that can be done by this fiscal year, and then ones that are huge amounts, we need justification, but then there's a bunch that are just putting on just to close out.
Perfect.
So that would be Article 10, where we'll fill in the blanks for the next town meeting.
Excellent.
We'll have all that information.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions about the warrant as it stands right now?
A couple, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Are we putting the money for the, what was it, the fire chief vehicle and the Fuller Field irrigation system? Are we placing those directly in the budgets?
Yeah, it's part of the budget right now, so if you want that pulled out into the warrant, I could certainly put that as a warrant article as well.
Personally, I don't see the point of making them warrant articles if we can fund them through the operating budget. And there was something else. Oh, paramedic implementation, we're not putting an article forward at this time?
I thought there was going to be further discussion tomorrow at the, with the Finance Committee and kind of make a determination at that point.
And the last one, Mr. Chairman, is I was approached by a citizen with a petition for a bylaw change relative to the makeup of the Board of Library Trustees. Was it submitted in time?
I can maybe ask the town solicitor to read.
I spoke with that individual before the meeting tonight. That's why I think he opted not to speak about it at public comment, because under the statute, the number of board of trustee members has to be divisible by 3. That's why we have 6. You can have 3, 6, 9, 12. That's just how the statute's written. So he was proposing to go from 6 to 5, which under the statute you cannot do. So that's why he withdrew it.
So it's a statute issue, not a bylaw issue.
Yeah, our bylaw says 6, but our bylaw is consistent with the statute. If we were going to change our bylaw, we'd have to go down to 3 or up to 9 if you wanted to have the odd number, which is the issue that brought this to the forefront. Because you have 6, you'll say, you can have a tie vote. But the way the statute was originally written, because it was, every 2 years, it had to be divisible by 3. That's the reason why we have 6. It seemed kind of odd. Why would we have 6? But that's why.
I mean, I appreciate that we have a requirement of 6 on the Finance Committee. It basically requires collaboration and compromise and general agreement. I don't see it as an important factor in how the library does business. They shouldn't be any different than any other board with 5 or 7 members. I really hate to do this, but could this board, if it so chose, put an article on the warrant asking for a home rule petition to be excluded from that statute, or is that not something the legislature generally does?
I suppose you could. I mean, why not? You want to take a shot at it?
Give our new state rep a little more work to do.
Right.
Well, I'd like to at least be able to consider that at the next meeting.
Sure.
Or, Mr. Chair, we could argue, I mean, you can divide 5 by 3. You get 1.67, so.
It has to be a person. You could divide any number by 3. Say, spoken like a true engineer.
Honestly, WPI education to work. Okay. We'll talk about that in the meantime. Anything else on the annual town meeting draft warrant? Thank you. We've received 2 applications for annual livery license renewals. Jacqueline Baldessari, doing business as the Taxi Livery Ride for 423 Water Street, and Kyle Casey, doing business as Boundless Limousine for 166 Grove Street. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the licenses requested.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. On to administrative business. We've received a request from the Clinton Veterans of Foreign War Post 523 to sell Buddy Poppies at the intersection of Chestnut and Church Street on Saturday, May 29th, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. to raise funds for veteran causes. It's the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move we grant the authorization for the VFW Buddy Poppy Drive.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Old and new business. Superintendent of Public Works is recommending award of a contract to low bidder Busy Bee Nursery and Landscape Construction Company of Jefferson, Mass. in the amount of $47,100 for repair of a portion of the Cameron Street retaining wall, which recently collapsed. Anything to add on this, Chris? Pretty straightforward.
Just add, I know their name sounds a little bit odd, but they've been in business for many, many years. They do rather large landscape jobs. They'll do large park work. They're fully capable of doing this project, and they have a very good reputation. They're from, Jefferson is really Holden, Mass. They're from Holden, and they're a reputable company, so. Has
there been any degradation since the...
Nothing to speak of. A little bit of asphalt that was kind of bridged has collapsed down, but the hole itself hasn't gotten any bigger, and the wall hasn't collapsed any further. No.
Good. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move we award the contract as presented.
Second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Town meeting accepted Prescott Lane as a public way in June 2019, but the contractor continued paying the monthly invoice for electrical service at the streetlights since that time. A newly hired bookkeeper brought this matter to the owner's attention, and they are requesting that the account be transferred over to the town of Clinton. So we're accepting a streetlight on Prescott Lane.
So if I could, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Just asking if the board would accept this streetlight on behalf of the town's inventory, that we would take over the light. As you just mentioned briefly there, in June of 2019, the town meeting did accept Prescott Lane as a public way, but inadvertently through a bookkeeping error, the developer continued to pay the bill. So we kind of never had that transition of that becoming part of the town's inventory. Several months back, it was brought to the town's attention. We did look into, asking National Grid to do some research for us, or what the process would be, what there was an outstanding balance, whether they could help us with that balance. So we're still finalizing that process, but in recently talking with the contractor, they need to get this off their books so that they can move forward on some other projects. And by right, it really should be part of the town. It's on the public way. It's part of it. It's one light. It's something that we should be maintaining. So I'm just asking if the board could just vote to accept the light, and then we can finalize this process with National Grid, and then take it off of the contractor's hands, so that we can then finalize whatever we need to do up there. So it's lighting up that neighborhood, and for citizens of that neighborhood, it's something we would do anyway. So I think that if the board can give me that authority, we can get this cleared up and move forward.
Considering the messes we've cleaned up from other developers, are all their other obligations met before we let them off the hook there?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. The planning board has accepted all of the project, and everything else was done that the town has needed to be done. And they say it did go to town meeting, and just the fact for us to be able to take over that light, so.
Can I help you?
Yes, I'm the builder and developer, Neil Vasile for MCN Realty LLC. And I just, this has been going on for a long time, and the only outstanding bill I stopped paying was, it goes from 2/24/2020 to 4/26/2021. So the bill right now is $713.39. And I got 60 pages of emails and notes, and nothing's gone on since almost 2 years. So we stopped paying for that date. So the outstanding bill is $713.39. Now, I got another project in Berlin. They won't turn on electricity, National Grid. They're being a bastard. It's hard to...
Just watch your mouth.
Let me tell you something about
Just watch
that.
your mouth at the meeting.
I know, but
You don't know.
They're hard to get along with. You got to go through a lot of personnel, okay? And they won't return your phone calls. They won't turn around and settle this. I even tried to shut off the electricity because I want this thing to get accepted. They won't. And I realize it's a public safety issue, but we got to resolve this. The street's been
Just so you know, sir,
accepted
this is the
for
first
years.
this board has heard of it.
I know that. But I want to know who's going to pay this last bit of bill. That's all I'm asking, and I want this thing to end.
Yeah, I understand. We just found out about it
Just found out about it?
tonight, yeah.
That's funny.
But I think...
We get emails. But anyway,
Okay, sir,
I'm not here to argue about it. I just
Okay.
want it to end.
thanks.
Yeah.
I think if the town will accept the light, I've talked to National Grid about, they're working with us on that balance. And again, there's part of that balance was before, I was made aware of it as well too. So we're willing to work with them. We want to get it resolved as well too. It is hard work on National Grid because they're all remote. But we have reached out to them, and if the town, if the selectmen are willing to accept the light, then we can work with them to correct the rest of it and get the rest of it cleared up. So.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the town act to accept the light on Prescott.
Second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
What happens with this bill now? That's all I ask.
Michael, I don't know. What are we doing with the bill?
Chairman, I'd say we're not prepared to answer that question
Yeah.
at this point in time.
Really?
Really?
Yes, really.
I don't think that's right, but whatever.
We just found out about tonight, sir.
I know.
We'll look into it.
Well, yeah,
I've been to 2 planning board meetings and...
This isn't the planning board, though.
And all that. Nobody wants to mention nothing, and I've been at each meeting. And I'm here tonight, and I want it settled.
Yeah, we just found out about tonight, sir.
But we can work, we'll work it out. We'll work it out. We'll work it out.
All right, Michael.
yeah, Mr. Chair, could we tentatively put it on the agenda for the next meeting? I mean,
I'm
we can
happy
always
to.
cancel it if we don't get any information back in time, but if,
I'm happy to look into it, sure.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to make a decision tonight. I don't know anything
no,
about it.
I agree with you 100%. We're not in a position to make any decision about it tonight, but I just as a show that we are looking into it, and we'll have it on the agenda for our next meeting, tentatively, unless we're unable to get any new information between now and that time.
Well, I'd just say that we acted immediately when the request was made for us to accept the light. We did it within 5 minutes of discussion. So
I agree.
I think going forward, we need time to evaluate the other consequences.
Please, you have to use the mic, sir. You have to use the mic.
Other towns, okay, or other cities too. And I'm not saying, everybody has rules, even your town. But when somebody turns around and gets the street accepted from a builder or developer, they accept the street lights, they accept the sewer, the water, the drain, everything that's part of the infrastructure of that subdivision, correct?
Sure.
Okay, so that includes the street lights. Is it not, you plowed the street after it got accepted, all right? I maintained it a year after, like I did what I had to do, and then it got accepted. Why isn't the street light part of it? It's only one light, it's not 10 lights.
I'm not sure how I can make this any more clear. We just found out about it tonight, so we're going
Oh,
to
I
look
know.
into it and deal with it at our
That's,
next
you know,
meeting.
that's all I'm asking. I think if you accept a road, I think it should be even the street light.
In theory, yes. Yep.
Well, that's all.
No, I understand.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, I don't want it to happen to somebody else. I'll be honest with you, I built quite a few houses. I built 14 houses and 2 duplexes.
No, we're aware.
I did all the roads for my father in West Ledge, did the whole subdivision there.
You did West Ledge?
Yeah, I did.
You missed the lights.
Myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you missed
did
the
that
lights
whole
over
by
there.
myself from
Okay,
start to finish. At all
we've
the
been cleaning
ponds.
up, excuse me, sir, we've been cleaning up the mess at West Ledge for the past year because you owed them some lights and you left them.
I know. That
Okay.
has nothing to do with me.
Okay.
Okay.
That
All
has
right.
nothing to do with me.
We'll talk about it next meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
All right, thanks.
Outstanding. It's also Berlin. Berlin's in Germany. MVP regional grant. I've been asked by Harvard and Bolton to join a regional action grant to provide guidelines for forestry and turf management. This is something that comes from our municipal vulnerability planning process. Michael, can you fill us in on this one?
Right, Mr. Chair, as you mentioned, we put together MVP plan a couple of years ago. Subsequent to that, now there are some competitive action grants to try to do some of the points that were part of that plan. And we were approached by Bolton and Harvard about trying to join with them on this project here, that they were going to put in a plan to look at developing kind of a land management best practices for land management. Their towns were more interested in like a forestry type plan, but then the consultants looked at Clinton and felt that for the state, they thought it would be an interesting project to bring Clinton on board because they were also trying to do a land and turf management plan as well too. So based on whether it's ball fields or open space or even private citizens, to try to come up with kind of like an urbanized practice of how we as a town on our properties, or even literature and education material for private landowners, to try to come up with these practices that would help improve land health and climate mitigation and adaptation resiliency. So it would be just a committee. I probably would look to have, they would look our input to have kind of a member on a steering committee, and then just helping with supporting the grant, or doing some what do they call, not dollar commitment, but a match of just like a time, just putting in kind of a time match of doing support, or going to a couple of meetings or stuff like that. So it looks to be a good project. We were asked to join, and I think it would be it's a competitive grant. We don't know if we get it, but it sounds like it would be some good information that could come out of it, and it might even become like a model that the state might use in other areas as well too. And we don't have any other plan for MVP Action Grant ourselves, so it's not as though we're taking away from something else that we would be doing. And they do continual rounds, so this would be this year's round, and if there's something that comes up that we need, we can put in for next year's round.
Any questions?
I just had one, Mr. Chair. So would some of these guidelines be like enforceable, or would they just be like recommendations?
Yeah, most of them would be recommendations and best practices. They might come up with, part of the project hasn't been defined until we go through it, but some of it might be template bylaws that communities might want to consider, and then that would maybe put a little more teeth to it, but again, that's up to each town as to what the board wants to move forward with or go to town meeting with, so there wouldn't be anything mandatory. It's mostly starting out as coming up with best practices, doing educational literature, and then if there's anything further, that each town would have to take their own action if they wanted to do something.
Okay, yeah, because I'm not opposed to it, but just Bolton and Harvard compared to Clinton, a little bit different landscape, so I just wouldn't want to be painted into a corner, and I don't know how this agreement would work out if there's three of us are in it, and if Bolton and Harvard wanted to do something, would we be, have to do it because we're one and they're two, they have the majority of the three. Right. So as long as any enforcement of any of these can still be settled town by town, then I don't have any problem with it.
Yep, no, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. I think they're just looking to use our environment, our setting, our land setting, and try to come up with, doing the research and testing and see what would work here. That might be a model through the state and other urbanized areas.
Good. What's the pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve joining the group with Harvard and Bolton.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All's in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Regarding the Personnel Board, we were a recent amendment to the personnel bylaw. We had to get we want a recommendation on this, whether our board or the town administrator is making appointments to the Personnel Board.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, back in 2017 at the annual town meeting, I don't know if the board recalls, but there was a change made to the Personnel Board bylaws, whereby I think the thrust of the change was to, if you recall, they were adding an employee of the town became a member of the Personnel Board. But in connection with that change, the provision also changed the appointing authority from the Board of Selectmen to the town administrator. So as of right now, the way that bylaw reads as a result of that 2017 amendment is that the town administrator is the appointing authority for the Personnel Board. So it is not a Board of Selectmen appointee, so you can't take it and give it back like you can with the others. If they had left that, Board of Selectmen, then you could delegate to the town administrator or take it back. But here, by bylaw, it is the town administrator. So it's the town administrator, as of right now, who is the appointing authority for the Personnel Board because of that change in 2017.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, so I just wanted to put this on the agenda just to, have that discussion with the board. There has been some recent interest in this committee, so I just wanted to be able to let the board know, because if it was going to be the board, then I would forward those letters to the selectmen. But it appears, based on the town solicitor's opinion, that I guess it's something the town administrator has to address, so.
Would this be something that falls under the 15-day veto window too, or does that, nope? Okay.
That would only apply if the Board of a Selectmen appointee and you delegated to the town administrator. Here, there's no such delegation because the bylaw is strictly authorizes the town administrator to make the appointment.
Mr. Chair, I mean, just a question to the town administrator, because we did go in a direction to have the Board of Selectmen come back and appoint board members. And I understand that by law, that's still the town administrator's responsibility, but I'm just curious, is there any, you're more than welcome to keep the authority. I mean, I don't really care, but I was kind of under the understanding that, you were kind of on board with that decision for the Board of Selectmen to start appointing people too. So I'm just, if you want to keep that authority, I don't have any problem with it, but I'm just curious, is this something you feel you want to keep this one specific authority to appoint this board, or would you not be opposed to, a bylaw change down the road that would align everything so that the Board of Selectmen appointed all the boards?
Yeah, I don't think I would be opposed. I think I did feel that if it's a policy-making board, that the selectmen, would have jurisdiction over that. If it's a staff position, that's different in the organization. But if it's a policy board or committee, I think I did feel in the past that that's something maybe the selectmen should be involved in. This was changed through a citizen petition. It was selectmen, then it was changed. And I think at the time, the town administrator was doing the appointment, so I think it just naturally, when the citizens put that together, they just said, this is how it is, so that's what it became. But it used to be selectmen, then it was changed, hard change through that bylaw. But I wouldn't be opposed to putting it back to the way it was, because as I do have that belief that any policy-making board should be maybe overseen by the policy board of the selectmen.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to take anything away from the town administrator. This is out of the sake of getting everything aligned. If we're appointing all the other boards, what's the reason just because there was language selected in 2017 that now has kind of created this situation? I'm not going to really fight for us to get control over it, but for the sake of conformity and standardization of having us appoint all boards, it's just, I don't know, something to consider. We don't have to do it at this, we don't have to do a bylaw change at this coming meeting, but maybe just something we consider moving forward, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this might be the only, one of the few appointments we make that's actually, it was created by a bylaw. Is that why this is different? I mean, it's the personnel board was created by bylaw, so that's why it's
Right, but I think what happened here, to Ed's point, when this change was made back in 2017, the intent of the change was not to take it from the Board of Selectmen to give it to the town administrator. At that time, the special legislation was already in force. I think the Board of Selectmen had delegated the appointing authority to Michael. So at that time, he was doing them. So when the citizen's petition was prepared, they just put in their town administrator. Okay. And it passed. I don't think they would intently. That's really how it happened. You know what I mean? If it had just changed with the Board of Selectmen, you would still have that authority. You could delegate it to the town administrator or not delegate it. But I think that's how the change happened. It wasn't. I don't think that change was specifically done for that reason. It was really done to add the employee to the personnel board.
Chairman?
Yes.
If I may. I guess it's one of the detriments or benefits of having been here for a long time, but one of the things that I and other boards of selectmen worked really hard at for a long number of years was we started with the bylaw approval of creating a strong town administrator as opposed to a less strong one. And we've been working as a board over the years diligently trying to reshape the structure of town government and put most of the decision-making in the hands of the day-to-day decision-making in the hands of the town administrator. And part of that, after we had the special legislation approved, was the board transferred its appointing authority for both employees and department personnel to everything that it had. And subsequently, in conversations with the town administrator, the board at the time came to the conclusion that the board should be the appointing authority for the policy-making boards in the town. Not to take anything away from the town administrator, but so that these appointed boards would reflect the policy intentions of the Board of Selectmen. And the town administrator was supportive of that change. But as town council said, this personnel board bylaw came up at the time that we had initiated that process of making the town administrator the appointing authority. So it was consistent with what the board was doing at the time. And it's only in the last couple of years that we decided to remove some of that responsibility and put it in the hands of, because policy determination should be able to be affected by the voters. So that was the intent of making those boards still appointed by the Board of Selectmen. So I don't think there'd be any, I personally wouldn't have any objection to having a warrant article to make that correction.
I don't have any problem with that. I just don't want to come off like we're taking anything away from Mike. If the town administrator is is comfortable with that, then I'm comfortable with it.
I'm pretty sure he was I mean, when we had the conversations, we didn't initiate that without his support. So I'd be comfortable with adding that proposed article to the warrant.
We need a motion to do that?
That's a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
5-0. We'll add that to next meeting's draft. Next up, sorry, our friends left, but good news about West Ledge.
Yes.
Finally, lights are energized and fully functional, so.
Yep. And I just want to extend special thanks to Michael, to the town administrator, because the last couple months of this had nothing to do with us. It was really just us dealing with National Grid and them coming, they would ask for something, we'd give it to them, then they would ask for something again, and then we'd give it to them, and it was, Mike did a lot of hard work to get this over the finish line. So we're finally able the lights were turned on sometime last week, so I know that everyone down there is happy, and I just wanted to thank Mike. He really did a lot of work in the last couple of months pushing that across the finish line.
With no help from West Ledge developers.
Well, you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that, because I definitely don't know the details of that gentleman that was here, but just seems to be this ongoing issue of developments getting approved and the lights being left in the wind.
Right.
So that this is now 2, and then
There's another one.
There's another one.
I want to show my friends at Nathan Heights that that is on our radar as well. It all because my phone's going to start blowing up already. No, it's awful, because these people, move into these developments in good faith, and we leave them, hanging in the wind. I think it's been 14 years up at Nathan Heights. So, we've been looking at that, and it's going to be a lot more involved project. But if we're going to take these roads over, then that's what we get.
It seems to happen. So I don't think there's. I question whether it's. I don't think it's anything nefarious. I often think that it's just like that I don't know if we really understand our role in that process, to be honest, because it just seems like that aspect of development just keeps getting, we had to ask town council to go back and dig through, we dug through meeting minutes and stuff of old meetings to kind of try to figure out where we're at with West Ledge, and this gentleman was confused about what was going on with the lights, and like, you know, we already mentioned, there's another portion of town, so I'm just curious to ask the question, like, how that process works, and is there just something that we're missing? Are we signing off stuff that we shouldn't be, and we should be looking into it more? Yeah, I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
That's the royal we, by the way, that the town we, not the Board of Selectmen
Yeah.
we, because that we
If I
doesn't
could,
come to us.
Mr. Chair, just to make a comment, generally what has happened in the past is that when a developer is coming in with a development that they're putting in lights and roads and whatever, they have to go to National Grid to get permission to, I mean, obviously they have to get permission of the planning board to do what they need to do, but then they go to National Grid to get permission to put in wires and lights and to energize the lights. So they need to either build it to National Grid specs or get their approval or whatever. So generally they make application in National Grid. National Grid gives them approval, and if the intent is that they want to turn it over to the town, National Grid then just requires the town to sign off saying that we will take over the bills at the end of the project. That's generally how it's always happened. My understanding with the West Ledge project was that National Grid was waiting for all of their requirements, as Mr. DeVault said, that are kind of stringent at times, and they were waiting for all the requirements to be met by the West Ledge developer. But in the meantime, the project kept moving forward and got done, and then they moved on, you know, out of town. So that's what created this whole kind of headache there. Here, I don't know what their discussion on the Prescott Lane, what the discussion was on with National Grid, because on the West Ledge, the lights never got put up and the wires never got pulled. So at least on Prescott Lane, they did all the work. They did put the lights up, the wires, it's energized, and that was fine. But until the town accepts the road, it's still the developer's responsibility to plow the street, to pay for the lights, to do whatever. Then when the town accepts the road, we then take that responsibility. Here, like we mentioned, on this Prescott Lane, they had a bookkeeping issue where inadvertently their accounting people kept paying the bill. So they never approached the town to say, well, now you took over the road, why aren't you paying the bill? Because we never got the bill. They kept paying the bill, and we never knew about it. So until they brought it to our attention, then we're now, again, trying to research and circle back with National Grid to find out what we need to do and how do we deal with, you know, with everything. So, yeah, morally, you know, we probably should have been paying for that light since we took over the road. But nobody approached the town with the bill or an account or to say that we should do it. So that's why we'll work with National Grid. We'll try to get this cleared up. But generally what will happen, a long story short, is there's a tri-party agreement where the developer and National Grid will come into agreement, and then National Grid waits for the town to sign off before anything gets approved. But I guess if it's at a point where the developer, on this one it was one light, so if the developer says he's going to take responsibility, they don't approach the town, and then it's up to the developer to approach the town, which he did, you know, recently. But prior to that, his financial people were just kind of doing business as usual until it came to their attention. So that's kind of how it all kind of came about. But at least in the future, if we know there's anything big going on, that we try to get these agreements in place so that everyone knows what their responsibility is up front.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may?
Please.
I don't know if we're drifting too far afield here, but I was ignorant of didn't realize that this was the same developer that left the town swinging.
I believe it's called Karma.
No, in all fairness, right, West Ledge was done by his father.
Right.
Him and his father had fallen out, and it's a different corporation than Prescott.
He referenced his father, he referenced past projects that he's managed, so he's burdened with the responsibility. They were nowhere to be found when this conversation
It's funny how they turn up when
about
the shoe's on the other
West
foot.
Ledge. Washed his hands of it entirely, and his hands would be washed entirely of doing business with the town of Clinton right now. He stopped paying the bill without contacting the town, without seeking to find a resolution. He stopped paying the bill, and the only reason he's here right now is because he needs to get that satisfied so that he can get another account with National Grid. That's why he's here. And he was nowhere to be found when he stopped paying the bill to National Grid for the streetlight, and he was definitely nowhere to be found with the previous West Ledge project. So I just want to clarify that the motion that we made tonight was that we would authorize National Grid to put that account in our name going forward. I don't know of anything in that motion that authorized the town negotiating on the developer's behalf with the unpaid bills.
No.
That's his burden.
Yeah, if we want to take that up at a future meeting, that's fine.
Yeah,
We did not take action on that.
But I want to make sure that motion that we approve doesn't cause us to assume responsibility for unpaid bills.
No, that was not my understanding of the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Personnel Evaluation Subcommittee would like to discuss approval for recommended town administrator goals as a result of the recent evaluation process. Ed?
This is, okay, approval of goals for town administrator? Is
Yes.
that- Okay, sorry about that. I just thought I said something to the personnel board. Yeah, so this is, 2 meetings ago, I presented the goals from the evaluation subcommittee for the town administrator. These are the goals, these are recommended goals for the town administrator that came out of the evaluation. So wanted to give everyone time to review them, ask questions about them, research them, just make sure they feel comfortable. So just to go over them again quickly, there were 6 of them. First was information gathering on a centralized electronic data recording system for town employees. Second was a rollout of the Munis software. Third was an organizational initiative. Fourth was a action item master spreadsheet creation and maintenance. Fifth was evaluations of direct reports to the town administrator. And the 6th was pending the results of a internal survey, possible improvements to town IT services. So at this moment, I would just like to make a motion that we adopt these goals for the town administrator.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and second. Any discussion?
Chairman, if I may?
Please.
I'm supportive generally of the subcommittee's work here, but I do have strong concerns about what, other than information gathering, what the rest of that number 1 item includes. If it's to better record sick time, vacation time, and usage thereof, that's something that I'd be very supportive of. If it has anything to do with time clock, punching in, scanning out, I'm vehemently objecting to any information gathering on systems that do that. I had said when I announced that I wasn't going to run again that one of the most important things that I became aware of as a selectman is the value of our town employees, especially the people in this building. They're dedicated, hard-working people that don't deserve the innuendo and insinuation that they're anything less than that. They're the most valuable resource we, as the Board of Selectmen, and the town of Clinton have. And I find the idea of requiring them to punch in and punch out offensive. If I were one of them, I would be deeply offended. So I support the subcommittee's report with that exception, and maybe I'm making a motion to amend this, the recommended goals to stipulate that item 1 has nothing to do with signing in, signing out, time clocks, or punching in or punching out type of recording system. That's a motion to amend the article.
There's a motion, is there a second for the amendment? Motion, so there's a second to the amendment. Discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, so, I mean, none of this is done to, I mean, people get their data tracked at companies all over the world. I don't know why anyone would be offended by that. This is a move, the goal of this is just to improve upon an already existing system. So we're trying to move out of paper and into electronic. And I don't have any specific axe to grind about hourly punching in and punching out, but I certainly don't want to, before we even look into this, completely cut that out of the equation. I think we have to have a discussion about that like everything else. I mean, it's just a question for the town administrator. I mean, there's hourly employees at the town hall that work for the town, correct? I mean, we track the hours that people work, don't we?
Yeah, we have payroll and timesheets that we fill out. You know, you
Right.
fill out
So I'm just not really grasping the insult or the difference between capturing something on a timesheet versus punching it in on a computer versus swiping a card if it's more convenient to do it that way. So I can understand Selectman Conley's his concern, but I really don't think that this is not done to slight any particular group. This is just to move this organization into more of a modern phase where we're centralizing all our data and we're recording it electronically. And we have had discussions about this. I know the town administrator has talked to the advantages of it, but to Selectman Conley's point, more to the advantages of just centralizing the data. I know that our head of our new HR department has expressed a concern to modernize this. So I'm not saying that we are going to ultimately end at that scenario that Selectman Conley is laying out, but I certainly don't want to just chop that part of the discussion off before we even have a chance to look into this. I mean, this is information gathering. I don't know if we start killing ideas before we even start to gather information on them. I don't see how we're going to move forward. So I don't have any strong opinions one way or the other than I am very much opposed to cutting out any sections of this. I would like to leave this open so we can get the information and we can do an honest evaluation of what we think is best for the town. And nothing is going to get approved. It's going to be a step-by-step process. So this goal is just information gathering. So any steps that we make moving forward are going to have to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. So I'm very much against any sort of an amendment to the motion just to specifically cut out one portion of what I think should be a broader information gathering exercise.
Mr. Chair. Jacobus.
So the purpose of this is to be in compliance with attendance and paid time off. At no point in the discussion of having a recording system was it discussed about using it for the purpose of employee evaluation. It's not to see who's coming in late or who's leaving early. That was never the discussion. So I think to insinuate that the nature of this this goal is a slight on the town employees is unfounded and baseless. That's never been discussed. And when the Human Resources Department is telling us that right now we are out of compliance, then that's a significant issue. So with it being information gathering and potentially involving punching in, again, it's not tied to evaluating any employees.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to be clear. I'm not insinuating anything, and I'm not trying to kill ideas. This is an idea. The idea of having town employees punch in and punch out, whether electronically or on their computer or however it ends up being an idea. It's an idea that shouldn't see the light of day. These people that we're talking about are the hardest working people in this community. They, time and again, especially during COVID, but frequently, whenever there's a problem, an emergency, these people step up, put in a lot more than they get paid for, and do the job.
Then they should be in favor of this.
I've got the floor, let me finish. They do the job without expecting extra compensation for the time that they put in. And I'm certainly supportive of collecting data to be in compliance, as Selectman Kobus suggested. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the concept of, why don't you just propose to put a chip in everyone's shoulder so you can follow them around all day and know where they're going?
I'm not sure that's what he's implying, but...
That's, I guess I've said as much as I've got to say about it.
Mr. Chair, I mean,
Please.
why don't we just have the town administrator or the department's heads guess how much everyone works every week?
Okay.
And let's not have them fill out timesheets, because maybe I'm going to be insulted because you're going to ask me to fill out a timesheet. We'll just guess how much people are working. I don't see the difference between filling out a timesheet and logging into a system and putting your hours in. Until someone can explain to me the difference between that, I'm not going to understand this motion to amend.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So, looking at the efficiency of that process currently, that would involve the department heads to have to come to the town hall, correct, to submit their timesheets or to sign off on timesheets. So it essentially would eliminate that step of having that employee or that department head to have to come up here. It's all done electronically. It makes the process more efficient, and it ties in with the Munis software program that the town invested several $100,000 into.
And Mr. Chair, we might not even might get into this discussion and decide that we don't even want to do that.
To be clear, we're not voting on that
Right,
tonight.
exactly.
Because frankly, and if I can say, I have serious concerns.
Sure.
In the direction that Mr. Connolly's going. As I've said before, I just want to make sure that we're looking at results here and what we're looking to get at, and is this a policy that is affecting how many people? 10 people? I want to make sure that we're doing things to get results that mean something instead of just standardizing something or doing this. So again, it's going to be a tough sell for me, but I don't have any information right now. So to be clear, getting away from the amendment, approving these goals is not approving any centralized electronic data recording.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay. So we have an amendment to clarify point 1 that has nothing to do with punching in and punching out. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. All's in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. That's 2-3. The amendment is defeated. We're back to the original motion to approve these goals. Again, number 1 is information gathering, and approving this motion in no way approves any system related to electronic data recording.
Chairman, can I just make one comment?
Please.
We do have a human resource director. I was just wondering why this should be under her under her. That's what we hired her for.
Yep.
All I can share is the human resources comments during our evaluation subcommittee meeting when this possible, because at the time it was a townwide goal. So I mean, we did already vote as a townwide goal to go in this direction. So, and I can, opinions change, I get it, but she has expressed support for looking into this as a solution. I just, I feel strongly that I don't want to put all of this just on her shoulders. I don't want this to be her burden to bear, because this is going to be a difficult sell. So I think something like this should come from the level of the Board of Selectmen with support from the Human Resources Director. And she has expressed that she is in favor of at least gathering information on a system like this, especially something that is going to be compatible with the Munis software that we're going to be rolling out. So I can agree with that sentiment. All I can say is from the opinions that she has expressed, that she is in favor of this, and I do think that something of this magnitude should come from the Board of Selectmen and not be burdened on one person to try to force a change like this. Because obviously, I mean, we're talking about gathering information on it, and it's not an easy sell. So I just think it has to be something that comes from the Board of Selectmen.
Understood. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes.
just going to add that I understand what Ed's comments are. I still struggle with the idea that, I understand that he wants it as a directive from the Board of Selectmen, but I don't understand why something that should be done by the Human Resources Director is being proposed as an evaluation tool for the town administrator. Wouldn't it be better to make this an evaluation tool for the Human Resources Director?
We're not in control of the Human Resources Department. We're only in control of the town administrator. So we have to dictate to him that it's important to us, and then he can delegate that responsibility to whoever he sees fit.
That's fair. Other questions, concerns, discussion? Hearing none. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay?
4-1. Mr. Buzzell? 3-2. Thank you. Ed, this last one's yours, I think, appointing selectmen to committee and board vacancies. Do you want to?
Yeah, just want to bring this up for discussion. I mean, we obviously don't have to make a decision about it tonight, but I think we made the right step in taking board appointments on that responsibility. But I do think that some boards have still fallen behind and they're not at their 5-member capacity, which is their intent. So this is just an idea that just want to bring up for discussion, and maybe we can have a more serious discussion later. But the way it would work is if there is a board that is short 5 members, that's supposed to have 5 members, the chairman would temporarily appoint a board of selectmen, a member of the board of selectmen to that board for the purpose of, if anything else, kind of reminding this board that there's a board that's not at its full capacity. Because there's a reason why boards get decided to be 5 members or 3 members or 6 members or whatever member they are. And I think if we're going to be in an appointing authority, we should also be a little bit more proactive in making sure that those boards are filled to the level that they should be. So it's just an idea. Just wanted to float it out there, get it on the radar, and we can discuss it tonight if you want, or we can just revisit it at a future meeting.
Chairman, if I may, just to show that I'm not an idea killer, I'm generally supportive of the idea of this. It's actually not such a new idea. About 2 or 3 years ago, the Conservation Commission was lacking enough members to hold meetings and quorums, and Selectman Jacoinski and I were appointed to temporarily fill those positions until new recruits could be brought in. And I think it worked well. Both he and I were previous members of the Conservation Commission, so I think that helped us. But as an idea, I think it's something that deserves further discussion and maybe implementation.
Yeah, would this be, in that case, would it be in an instance where a board doesn't have a quorum, or would it be if it's, if there's technically a vacancy,
If the board's supposed to be 5 members and there's only 4, one of us would be appointed to it until that 5th spot is filled. And it would also be the responsibility of that board member to help that board fill that spot, because I know we have a problem here with just getting enough volunteers. So I think because I know if I was appointed to a board and that's another night out of the month where I'd have to go to the meeting, I'd be motivated to try to find some people to apply for that position. So I just think it would give us some extra motivation to find people out in the community to reach out and get them into those positions.
I'm not opposed to the idea. I think that there's a lot more that needs to go into raising awareness on the upcoming vacancies, so people can kind of plan, and even having some sort of description of what's involved, right? Because I think that, versus, applying for just a board position without any understanding of what that necessarily entails, it can be a challenge, but, I think that, as part of a larger effort, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Any potential exposure as far as conflict of interest, Bob?
Of the Board of Selectmen to another committee, as long as that committee or board, other board isn't supervised by the Board of Selectmen, which isn't the case. In other words, if you appointed someone to the Personnel Board, if that bylaw gets changed, you don't control the Personnel Board, you don't control the Conservation Commission, so you could do that. Certainly not encouraged. I mean, if you want to do it on a temporary basis, because you'd like to think of the town of our size, that you could have other members other than Board of Selectmen members on these committees. But like Mr. Conley mentioned, we did it a few years back, and I think it did work out well. But it's the board's call. I don't see any conflict, because none of those positions are compensated. The board does have a stipend. You couldn't have another stipend. None of those positions, at least when I remember, none of them receive a stipend. So under the law, there wouldn't be a conflict. But I certainly wouldn't encourage it, unless it's on an as-needed basis.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would see it more as a tool to be used if boards are having difficulty functioning, either quorum-wise or attendance-wise. I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that there's a vacancy, we fill it immediately. I'd like to see it a little bit less rigid. There's 2 or 3 vacancies on a board. It might be a good opportunity to fill it, but I think it should be treated maybe on a case-by-case basis by the board.
All right. If everybody's cool, can we table this for next time and think about it?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks for the good idea. Any other old and new business?
Mr. Chairman, just one item. I'd like to request that our next meeting be held in the Selectmen's Chamber.
It's my,
I would second it.
It's my sincere hope. We had 0 new cases today. We've been sitting at a plateau of like 25 for like 6 weeks. I wish it was going down. It's my sincere hope, as I told our cable director, to plan for that. If there's no heading in the wrong direction, I don't see any reason, assuming there's nothing huge on the agenda. Again, just so everyone understands, it's not just us that, we have to provide a space that's safe for a crowd to meet. I'm hoping that the next 2 weeks are kind to us, and that we can do that for sure. So it's, again,
Mr. Chair,
my sincere hope. Yes,
when we post the meeting,
we have to say where it is.
but it's not enough to just to say the town hall, it has to say the auditorium or the chamber?
Yeah.
So it couldn't because based on the agenda, we should have an idea of the type of crowd that we're going to have. So so we'll have 48 hours at minimum to make a decision. I know Selectman Conley would like to have one more meeting up there, and I don't know how many more meetings we have left.
That would give us 2.
Yeah, so
I'm willing to double that, and I would be sincerely disappointed if it doesn't happen. I just can't promise anything right now. Again, if numbers stay the way they are or go down, I'm happy to entertain the idea. If we just know that if something bad happens, I don't want to make any promises I can't keep.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So we could adopt the school's policies on opening the windows and, encouraging the social distance, just like we're doing now.
I am open to any and all ways to make Mr. Connolly's last wish come true. And again, it is on my list. It's not something I take lightly. So,
And Mr. Chairman, I make the request not frivolously. Most of the other town boards are meeting in the Selectmen's Chamber. While it's still a Selectmen's Chamber, I want to get to sit down there one more time. But the Planning Board, the Finance Committee, tonight there were many members of the Finance Committee all there deliberating the budget safely and
let's just say that we'll plan on it unless things go south. So,
and no dog hearings if we're going to be in the chamber, because that's a big crowd pleaser. Get a lot of people for those.
No what?
I can't wait for the
dog hearings.
I can't wait for the leash. Is the leash law article going to get more than the chicken article from a couple of years ago? That's what I want to say. Committee reports, any committee reports? Mr. Conley and I are meeting with our Finance Committee counterparts tomorrow. We met this past Friday, and we'll have a deeper dive into the budget tomorrow. Cable is scheduling, we have to schedule a meeting for next week, I think, is our plan.
Yeah,
If your schedule
yes.
accommodates it, we can do that.
And this is supposed to be meeting with the schools too, and I think we should also, it's been a couple months, I think, since our last meeting that we had with him, with,
Has it been that
Mark.
long?
Hasn't
Yeah.
hasn't it been like 2 months? But I'm just saying, so we gave him a 6-month window for that report, so I think it's fair just to ask him to just present like what he has, even if it's just an outline, and he can work with Mr. DeSicis on that, but I think it would make sense to have some kind of presentation of where he's at on that.
Understood. Any other committee reports? Hearing none. That closes regular business for tonight's meeting. We will be adjourning to executive session for, are we scrapping one of these, Michael?
Yeah, just those two.
Two. Well, so we'll be going to executive session for two matters under Article 3 of the Open Meeting Law, one to discuss the landfill consent order, and another to discuss facilities union contract. The town accountant contract will be tabled until another night. We will not be returning to open session other than to adjourn for the evening. Our next meeting is May 19th. Unless there's any other business, I'll do a roll call vote to enter executive session. Mr. DeVault?
Aye.
Mr. Conley?
Aye.
Mr. Kobus? Aye. Mr. Busno? Aye. And the chair is aye. Thank you and good night.